Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Cherylanne Arnott. Now, we're going to be discussing her amazing poetry book, Moments of Grace, Inspirational God-Centered Haiku. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com, but people, get this. Today's focus is all about moments of grace. But if you want to gather more on what Cherylanne has in store, listen, do yourself a favor. Head back on over to her Amazon Barnes & Noble pages and pick up her other two titles. One is called Reflective Spectrum, and then the other is The Adventures of Flat Cat and Friends, Book 1. Again, all three are available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. And I will say, Cherylanne was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best publishers in the business, Author Reputation Press. So if you or anyone you know have a book that they'd like moved, people, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give. Contact ARP and have their wonderful team move it for you. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and they specialize in taking your literary creation to the next level. Find out more information on them through authorreputationpress.com. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Cherylanne here on the line with us. By the time we're done with our discussion here today, you're going to run on over to her Amazon Barnes & Noble pages and pick up your copies of Moments of Grace because it is that impactful. It's so much bigger than just a poetry book, people. It is about faith. It is inspirational. It is something that you will not be able to put down. And at the end of the day, Cherylanne is the expert, okay? It's her poetry. She's written it, and she's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. So without further ado, let's bring her here with us. Cherylanne, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Benji. I'm just fine. I'm a little excited, and I want to, broadcast the book.
Absolutely. So. Well, listen, we are just as excited to have you here, okay? It truly is a pleasure, and the honor is all ours, Cherylanne. Now, listen, you had to lay down the foundation for us to even invite you here, so thank you. You started it, and we're really looking forward to this. Now, before we go into the book, because I do know we have a lot of information to cover pertaining to that, I think it's important if we start off by learning a little bit more about your background. So please, let's start there and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, even as a little girl, I would write things down and share them. I had much encouragement. And in the 1990s, I won several silver and golden poet awards from World of Poetry, and was published in 9 of their anthologies about poetry. And that was a boost. And it's a kick to have your own literary, Book of Congress, number in the back of the book, of course, and your name in the index. So that was definitely a boost for me and in confidence. And ever since, I have loved haiku since I was introduced to it in high school. And it's succinct, to the point. And I know that the moment, but real reality lies in the individual perception. I know I wrote it one way, but whoever interprets it their way. I don't know. My beloved auntie gave me the tools to read and write and appreciate for music and motion, and I'm forever grateful. Lately, I write to touch people with their own thoughts and awaken them to their own thoughts and passions. Everybody interprets it differently.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you very much for articulating that, Cherylanne. And listen, this may seem like a basic question to someone like you who has always been just engulfed in poetry. As you stated, from a very early age, you were receiving poetry awards. I mean, that's pretty fantastic, people. First and foremost, for my listening audience, what I got from that is, people, this is what she knows, right? She eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff. It's a part of her life. I love that. Now, for
you write what you know.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Now, for someone like me, Cherylanne, who, again, I know of poetry, but I would definitely consider myself novice in that area. Now, I do know enough to know that there are different poetry forms. Now, your subtitle specifically says haiku. I know that's one poetry form. There's ballads, there's sonnets, there's a lot of other ones out there as well. Well, a question for you, Cherylanne, and I'll put myself as the sacrificial lamb here. What is a haiku? Can you explain that to us?
Haiku is a traditional Japanese form of poetry. My favorite genre, there are different forms, but mine is 5-7-5. So it's 17 syllables that express your opinion, succinct, and you can interpret them your different ways. I meant them one way, but there are other ways to interpret them. So that's what I love about it. It's 3 lines, 5-7-5, very to the point, at least for me. Other people, they can interpret it their own way. And I get a lot of different opinions from that. I've had sounding boards, across the years of, I thought of this way. I thought of this way. Not the way I exactly meant it, but good.
Well, Cherylanne, that is the beauty of art, isn't it? I mean, art is it's open to interpretation. Right? And it's kind of like that old adage about beauty, right? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, meaning it's going to vary from person to person. And that is the beautiful thing about art, is it's always open to interpretation. And it's magnificent when you see things that maybe you looked at from one particular perspective and someone else has a completely different perception. I think that's where a lot of the fun comes into it. Now, Cheryl, next question that I want to go into, and continuing with some of that fun here, I think your title is amazing. Moments of Grace. There's something about it that just stops you in your tracks and it's just enticing. It really captures your attention and sucks you in. And I think as a writer, that's what you're wanting your readers to do, right? Is really hold that attention there. But not only Moments of Grace, but Inspirational God-Centered Haiku. Talk to us about that title, Cherylanne, and why you chose it to be the representation for your book.
If we're perceptive or lucky enough to appreciate them, just open your mind to the haiku. Open your mind.
I love
that. The title of the book means exactly what it says. Moments of grace. There are certain moments in your life where you're just enlightened. And if you can share them, whoever interprets them will have their own interpretations, and they're all good. So, I don't know, moments of grace. These are my moments of grace, expressed in the haiku, the 5-7-5, that's the original type of haiku, and that's what I like the most. So that's what I write. And I have written haiku, and I've done poetry readings at art galleries, libraries, schools, children's hospitals, churches. And in fact, I used to send as sounding boards at 5 a.m. to the pastor and several parishioners of a church that I kind of babysat for. I didn't really belong to it, but I got feedback before I put it in the hard copy, and they were always most supportive, great encouragement, helped build lots of my self-confidence, and everybody needs that. You know that.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. People, again, we're here on the line with Cherylanne Arnott. We're discussing her amazing poetry book, Moments of Grace, Inspirational God-Centered Haiku. Available for purchase through Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble, but make sure you check out her other two titles as well, Reflective Spectrum, and then The Adventures of Flat Cat and Friends, Book 1. You know, Cheryl, I want to switch gears here, and I want to talk about another one of the books that you've written, okay? Now, The Adventures of Flat Cat and Friends, Book 1, is one that I know has a particular connection to you and one that you're really proud of. Talk to us a little bit more about that book, please.
It absolutely is, Benji. I was the animal care expert for a nature center for 14 years. And I used to take the animals as therapy animals to children's hospitals and schools and various classes. And that was my most favorite thing in the world. I had 13 therapy animals in my own home in my care. And the first book, Flat Cat and Friends, is the flat cat and the ratty and the dove and the chinchilla and the guinea pig. And they were all real animals. This is real. It's not a fantasy. So I'm very proud of that book because I'm a naturalist. I love animals. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of them, in my care at the nature center, and I had a lot of them at home in my own nature center, right? So it was just wonderful. And I had so much, positive reinforcement with that from everyone. I had a very almost captive audience with the children and their teachers, and they all loved it, and I was able to read it to them and share it with them and actually share the animals themselves with them. So it was pretty wonderful. That's all I can say. I'm very happy with that part of my life.
There you have it. Cherylanne, let's talk about your writing background on a whole, okay? So we know about your poetry background and awards that you've won. But of course, The Adventures of Flat Cat and Friends, as you mentioned, that's not a poetry book. So of course, you're more versatile than just the poetry spectrum. Talk to us from a writing background. Where does that creative inspiration come from?
As a little girl, I would write things down and share them. And I had much encouragement. Like I said, I had, several awards from World of Poetry, blah, blah. And in high school, I had encouragement from my teachers and my auntie. She really gave me a background in reading, writing, motion, poetry. It was all to the point, The real bounty, the real beauty lies in individual perception. Auntie gave me the tools to read and write, my appreciation for music and motion, and I'm forever grateful. And I write to touch people with their own thoughts, awaken them to their own thoughts and passions. And everybody interprets it differently. I wrote it one way, but it's interesting to find out what other people think. So, my books are for everyone, young and old alike, and there's more to come because I have 3 or 4 books on the books. I'm trying to write them.
There you have it. What a great segue.
We'll see how that goes. My readers' comments bring tears to my eyes. Their insight and support, their critiques and enthusiasm in this and all my endeavors. You know, I'm in awe that people respond to me in such a way. It's incredible. As an author or a person, you never expect all of that, and you're like humbled. And I am. I'm humbled by it. I'm like, really? Do I deserve this? I guess so. Because too many people are backing it to be lying. They're not lying. 9 out of 10 might be, but that other one is not.
You know, Cheryl, last question here for you. We know about this book. We know about your past. Well, I'm focusing now on the future. Cherylanne, I know that you just said that there are more on the horizon. Please talk to us about what's upcoming.
Okay. What's upcoming is the second book of The Adventures of Flat Cat and Friends, which are real, true therapy animals, and these are their personalities. Okay, second book is Provocateur, which is a sequel to Reflective Spectrum. And it's also, you know, just the good, the bad, and the ugly of your life. And the third one is, of course, it's not, it's from Moments of Grace, but I'm going to call it Tea with Jesus. And then I have other ones. They're called Outright Miracles. I've had outright miracles in my life, and believe me, you're going to hear about them because they are stupendously wonderful, and they are outright miracles.
People, you know what I love? We've talked about so much pertaining to Moments of Grace, pertaining to the adventures of Flat Cat and Friends, and yet we've barely scratched the surface. There's still so much left to be discovered, and you know where you have to go to discover them. Amazon, as well as BarnesandNoble.com. Moments of Grace, Inspirational God-Centered Haiku is one title, but make sure to get the other 2 available now, Reflective Spectrum, and lastly, The Adventures of Flat Cat and Friends, Book 1. Check back in frequently because, as she stated, there's others on the horizon as well, people. The gift just keeps on giving. You know where you have to go to pick them up. Cherylanne, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you.